Okay, hey, good morning, everybody. It is good to see you. I'm glad you're here. We're going to get started with this one. We know that in the last chapter, we had Chef Two go down into the tomb. The torch went out. Torch went out. Okay, well, we're going to go forward and see what happened. This is chapter 19, and it's called Fatal Mistake. Fatal means deadly. Mistake, you know what that is. All right, well, let's get started on this and see how we do. This is chapter 19, Fatal Mistake in Mara, Daughter of the Nile. Stay tuned. The big common room of the Inn of the Falcon blazed with a light that resounded to the usual clatter of crockery and conversation. Though it was well past midnight, Asher was still waddling here and there with platters of stew and mugs of keyed beer, and the juggler's balls wove a glittering pattern in the air before one of the larger and more boisterous cubicles. Mara sat alone in the booth at the far corner, slowly twisting the ring, which winked up at her mockingly from one finger. A cup of wine stood untouched on the low table before her. It was stale and flecked with dust and had gathered on its surface. She had been waiting for Chef Two since the mark of 5 weary hours. She's been in the Inn of the Falcon for 5 hours. The torch flames dipped in a gust of air, and she started up quickly, glancing toward the entryway door. But it was only DeConck who appeared there for the third time in as many hours. She sank back upon her mat as he lumbered across the floor toward her. "Seen not of him yet, I suppose," he grunted, sagging in the entrance to her booth. She shook her head, and he ran a hand wearily over his stubby jaw and up under his wig. "By Ammon, I'm about at the end of my hawser. He should have been back by DeConck. He'll not come back. Something's happened. I doubt we ever know what, but something's gone wrong." "You mean to give up, do you?" "Oh, wait a bit longer, but it's folly. You know that." DeConck slapped his wig back into place and scowled down at her. "Perhaps I do, but he bade me to stand by to sail sometime tonight, and the night's not done yet. I'll wager he's not either. I've yet to see a snare sesh I can't wiggle out of, one way or another." "DeConck, do you know where he is this time?" The captain shook his head uneasily. "Nay, he doesn't tell me everything, maid. I presume it's dangerous." "Aye, it's dangerous. He was 10,000 kinds of a fool to attempt such a thing. That's how dangerous it is." "Aye, well, now don't look so, little one. It may be all will come out right yet." Patting her on the shoulder abstractedly, DeConck glanced toward the door. "I'd best be starting back. If he should come, with me not there to take charge of that cargo." He hurried away, his big shoulders drooping. The torch flames dipped once again as he went out. Mara sat on, with her legs cramped and numbing under her, swirling the dusty wine in her cup. Finally, she too rose, groped for her discarded sandals, and slipped them on. Then she flung her cloak about her and wandered slowly across the room. As she passed the fire pan, Niftaya's thin, strong fingers reached out to clutch her arm. "Where is he?" she whispered the old woman fiercely. "You know, don't you? Why is he so late?" "Mistress, I can't tell you. I can't tell all I know. But only he knows what's keeping him." "You should give me some notion, if you would. One word as to when he'll come here." "I've told you I know not." Mara jerked free. "It may be he'll never be here. It may be—" Something in Niftaya's face cut her short, a curious puckering. She realized suddenly that the old woman's eyes were glassy with tears. Mara bit her lip and, moving closer, touched the tense shoulder. "Mistress, my heart is with yours. I'd comfort you if I could." The unexpected sympathy was almost too much for Niftaya. She pressed a skinny hand to her lips, half turning away, for a moment painful to both of them. She struggled visibly to gain control of herself. Then her hand slid from her mouth down to her strange shell necklace, and her face settled stiffly into its usual network of wrinkles. We will not give up, blue-eyed one. He will come. Aye, he will come. The lie tasted bitter on Mara's tongue. Turning abruptly, she went on across the room. The courtyard was still empty of everything but moonlight, and even that seemed dim and spiritless. Mara stood on the doorstep a moment, with the torch sputtering behind her, then turned back into the inn. She would order a plate of stew. If it had not come by the time she had eaten it, if he had not come by the time she had eaten it. Fool, she told herself angrily as she settled down again in her cubicle. Why do you keep hoping? He's lost. You'll never even know what happened. She could not eat the food Asher brought any more than she could answer the anxious, unspoken questions in his face. She sat toying with big chunks of meat. It mattered little now what she told her master. She would tell him everything. We're talking about Nahira now. Okay, where was I? She would tell him everything. Without Sheftu, the king was ruined. No one else could possibly. Oh, mother of truth, why had she ever met him? For a moment, she longed to turn time back, undo everything, even go back to the fluting irons and Tita's familiar scolding. She flung the spoon down, then stiffened as a shadow fell across her. The juggler, Saur, was leaning in the entrance to the cubicle, smiling his twisted smile. 3 gilded balls circled furtively above his hand. Live forever, face of the lily, he greeted her. Thou art long alone tonight. Where is our friend Sashai? I know not. Begone. Mara picked up her spoon and started eating. Strange, purred Saur. Often he comes here when you do not, but never before have I seen you save at his side. Mara glared at him, but preserved a stubborn silence. The Maid of Mystery, the juggler went on dreamily, invisible to poor mortals save in the hours of darkness, in this one spot, where do you hide in the daytime? Eye of the turquoise, that my heart is never gladdened by your countenance, whether in the marketplace or the villas of the great ones. That is none of your affair. Mara pushed her plate away, seething. You take my appetite, juggler. Be off with you. He only smiled. With an air of pleasant leisure, he shifted his crooked body, and the balls danced slightly to the other hand. Aye, aye. One must be discreet, and you are the very flower of discretion, are you not, lovely one? Not a word have you said about your troubles tonight, though it's obvious they weigh heavy on you. Suddenly he bent close to her, his breath in her ear. Where is he? He is late. You may trust me. I'm in his confidence like you. Pushing him away, Mara scrambled to her feet, swatting his golden balls in every direction and spitting a stream of invective that included several Babylonian phrases Inani could never have heard of. Get thee gone, I said. You son of 40 devils, I'll not listen to your cursed babble. Be off, be gone. She broke off breathless, aware that every head in the inn had whirled toward her. There was a pause, then Saur picked up his gilded balls and with a faint shrug drifted away across the room. Mara drew a long breath and eased down upon the mat. Trust that keft man. As well trust the red-haired Set himself. It's only curiosity, Sheftu had said. He's loyal, aye, perhaps, and perhaps his loyalty was not as freely for sale as onions in the marketplace, but she doubted it. Still trembling a little, she watched him coolly begin his juggling again in another corner. Why, she reflected, should I not admire this rogue instead of hating him? He seeks only to know which barrel holds the fish, and have I not always lived thus? Nevertheless, I do hate him. And what's more, I'm afraid of him. I forget him, she told herself wearily. Forget all of it. Nothing was to be gained by sitting here any longer. She reached for her cloak and rose, moved for the last time through the din of tambourine and conversation and the thick smell of meat into the chill, fresh wind of night. But this time the courtyard was not empty. Even as she left the torch behind and started to cross the dark pavement, she heard the click of a gate and saw the tall, cloaked figure just inside it. She stood one moment in startled disbelief. Then, with a cry, she darted toward him, stumbling on the uneven ground, reaching out to make sure. Sheftu! He was no wraith. He had come. He was here. She felt a relief so intense it made her almost dizzy. Mother of truth, what kept you? What kept you? I thought you were dead. So did I, little one, he whispered. He was leaning against the wall as if too weary to stand. She put out her hand to touch him, but hesitated, awestruck by where he had been and what he had done since she saw him last. Sheftu, are you well? Aye, I'm well enough. But something went amiss. Everything, Mara. Our torch burned out. Burned out? Before you? As we were leaving the inner chambers. Mara felt goose flesh crawl up her arms as the full meaning of that came home to her. Oh, Cyrus, she whispered. She drew her cloak about her, shivering. We tried every passage, some of them twice, 3 times. Ammon, it seemed years. We ended by stumbling on the right one, sheer chance. It was a moment before she could make her mind go on to anything else. Then she lifted her head quickly. But you were successful? You brought the gold? All we could carry. Then it's done. It's finished and over. Aye, it's finished. Mara drew a long, shaky breath. And you're back safe. Do you swear all's well with you, Sheftu? Come where I can see you. It's so dark. Dark? This courtyard dark? Merciful Ammon, you know nothing of the dark. Nay, perhaps I don't, but I can't see you. He was quiet a moment. Then he spoke in a different tone, very softly. I can see you, as clear as in the sun. He lifted one hand and touched her cheek, the lotus in her hair. Suddenly he pushed away from the wall and gathered her in his arms. I believed I would never see you again, he whispered. For 5 hours I believed that. Ah, Mara, what a difference 5 hours can make in the way a man thinks. He's going to kiss me, she thought. He can't help it. He must. Sheftu, she breathed. It would have been hard then, never to see me again. He twined his fingers in her thick hair and, pulling her head back, looked down into her face. Then, murmuring something under his breath, he set his mouth against hers hard. Triumph swept over Mara, giving way immediately to something so much stronger and deeper that every other reality dropped away. She found herself clinging to him fiercely, caught up in an emotion more compelling than any she had known. For once, she did not plan or scheme or use her wits, since it was quite impossible. She did not even think. It was a long time before he released her reluctantly and pulled her head onto his shoulder. The minutes went by, and Mara drifted back slowly to the ordinary Egyptian night, the courtyard, the cold reality. She was a little frightened. What was it that had happened in the space of one kiss? This was not something she could play with as she chose. Nay, it was quite the opposite. His arms still held her. She became aware of them as a separate sensation, like the rough linen of his headcloth against her cheek, like the pebble pressing through the sole of her sandal. She stirred, and at once his arms tightened. Let me go, Sheftu. I'll never let you go. Never. He turned his head against hers, brushing his lips over her hair, her ear, across her cheek. I love you, Mara. Oh, Ammon. I would that were true, she whispered. It is true. For a moment of pure happiness, she closed her eyes and let herself believe it. Surely he meant it. He meant it tonight. He had kissed her. He needed her tonight. But tomorrow, She knew quite well how these things turned out. She opened her eyes. Impossible, she said bluntly. You're a great noble, a lord of Egypt. None of that matters, not after 5 hours in the dark. He pushed her away enough to look at her, but kept tight hold of her arms. I'm not speaking lightly. Do you understand? By tomorrow morning, you'll forget you spoke at all. His voice roughened. I'll not forget. I know what I want, lotus-eyed one. I'm weary of dueling with you. You'll share my life as long as it lasts, and such as it is. Is that clear enough? Quite clear. But you must be mad. Tomorrow, he seized her chin between thumb and fingers and twisted her face up to him. Be quiet, he whispered. He kissed her at first gently, then again not at all gently, and she gave herself up to it. Never mind tomorrow, she thought. Never mind anything. She was building dreams like palaces. Sheftu loosed her abruptly and dropped both arms to his sides, moving away a step. Little one, this must stop. He drew a deep, irregular breath. I still must show myself inside there, lest they begin to mourn me as dead, and you must get back to your boatman. Aye, said Mara shakily. The dreams were still there, turret on airy turret. I hope he waited for me. Did you see Nakok? Before I came here, he's already off down the river with his passengers. As to the rest of it, Sheftu moved closer, lowering his voice. You must seek audience with the prince tomorrow. Aye, Sheftu. Tell him all's well, the doors plastered over and sealed, as we found it, and the stones rolled back into place. The tomb has a second occupant now, but it has what? The second occupant is the guard. Remember the guard that Sheftu killed? He met her eyes in silence, and she shivered. No matter, he said quietly. Mention none of that. Not about the torch or any problems. It's done and finished. I want only to forget it. Tell him the gold's hidden, safe at hand to pay our promises when the time comes. Aye, and tell him Count Cockpepper is one of us. I talked to him. Osiris, it was only this afternoon. It seems a year ago. My Sheftu, how tired you must be. She reached out impulsively. You'll seek your couch soon, never fear. He smiled, folding his hands over hers and pressing it tight, then tighter. Mara, he whispered. Suddenly his face changed. He opened his hand and looked down at her finger. Remember this one was called Fatal Mistake? What do you think that mistake was? Too late. She was aware of the hard shape of the ring, as if it were a circlet of fire burning into her flesh. She could no more prevent her involuntary attempt to jerk away than she could break the iron grasp which suddenly held her. She stood paralyzed as he slowly raised his eyes to hers. It was the dangerous Sheftu of old who stood there now. I am touched, he said softly, that you should treasure this little keepsake for so long. You're angry, she breathed. Oh, Sheftu, I should have told you long ago. The old man in Abydos would take naught for helping me, but I was afraid if I told you, you would make me give it back. Thanks be to the gods, her voice was reasonably steady, for all she was giddy with fear. It was stupid of me, perhaps wicked. Here, take it, Sheftu. Nay, please. He was silent a moment, then gently loosed her hand. Keep it as a token of my esteem. Mara tried to smile. Why did he stand there so still, just looking at her? He was thinking what? She could never tell anything from that impenetrable face. I will, if you're certain you wish it. It has brought me luck all day. I think it bears a powerful charm. I wore it tonight to bring you back safe. And it may be that I owe my life to it, he finished smoothly. Aye, perhaps you're right, little one. Perhaps I do. He straightened deliberately, relaxed, and smiled warmly, intimately, as only he could smile. I must leave you, lotus-eyed one, though tonight I confess I am especially loath to. Be here tomorrow, as soon after nightfall as you are able. It cannot be too soon for me. How much of that was irony? He gave no chance to find out, for he turned quickly, strode across the courtyard, and through the inn door. Mara stood motionless where he had left her. The moon inched imperceptibly higher in the night sky, and a little breeze sprang up to stir the folds of her sleeve. She shivered. Suddenly, she tore the ring from her finger and hurled it with all her strength across the courtyard. Whirling, she started blindly for the gate, then slowed and stopped. After a moment, she turned back, searching carefully for the ring, and found it at last. A gutter snipe did not fling away a fortune, even to satisfy the wildest disappointment. Such gestures were for the rich and secure, whose airy palaces were real. Tucking the ring into her sash, she hurried out of the courtyard and along the dark and evil streets to the river. I am secure, she told herself. He believes me. Surely all is well. Could he have smiled like that if it were not? Aye, he could, and she knew it. All right, well, that was pretty crazy. He saw that she has the ring, which makes him think she is now a double spy working against him. That somewhere along the line, she has not been honest. Okay, so this next part is part 6, the trap. And it's chapter 20, the bait. You know, you bait a trap, you put the bait with something like cheese for a mouse, and then that's the bait for a trap. So the next one is part 6, the trap, chapter 20, the bait. And poor Chef 2, poor Mara, it's kind of a dark time for them. We'll see what happens next time. All right, guys, have a great day. Sun should be coming up pretty soon, and then I can go eat some breakfast. Well, goodbye for now. Take care. Bye-bye.